Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadi Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And we'll share the screen here. Share. Here we go. First topic is a question received a few years ago. Very good question. In Gurudeva's teachings, is awareness synonymous with consciousness? How do these two relate to the mind? And that's our first question to you. How would you answer that question? Okay, awareness is the witness. Consciousness is what is being witnessed. So, we'll give two examples. I am witnessing sadness. I is awareness, and sadness is the state of consciousness that we are in. I am witnessing inner light. I is awareness, and inner light is the state of consciousness. So that's the idea. So it's the witness. Awareness is the witness. Consciousness is what is being witnessed. So like the eye sees an apple. So the eye is awareness. Apple is consciousness. So there's some nice ideas on this in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. In modern times, both the East and West, the term yoga has become approximately synonymous with the yoga asanas or postures. And the goal of this approach to yoga is quite often simply the health-oriented benefits. Typical description from one yoga studio website states that yoga increases the circulation of oxygen-rich blood, nourishing and detoxifying the internal organs, musculature, cardiovascular, immune, and endocrine, digestive, reproductive, and nervous systems. Does all of that. Sometimes mental benefits are also mentioned, such as improving concentration and clarity of mind and reducing stress. So it helps with those things, but that's not its main purpose. The goal of each Hindu tradition is to provide practices through which an individual can sufficiently mature his or her divine nature to achieve liberation from rebirth. Different Hindu traditions provide different paths, some focusing on service, others on devotion, others on meditation, still others on spiritual knowledge. In Hindu scripture, the earliest usage of the term yoga as applied to spiritual endeavor has the meaning of. How would you answer that question? What does yoga in its original or sense mean? It's found in a number of ancient Hindu scriptures. The answer is, in Hindu scriptures, the earliest usage of the term yoga as applied to spiritual endeavor, yoga also has secular meanings, So yoga as applied to secular, spiritual endeavor has the meaning of the control of the mind and senses. And that is the sense in which the term yoga is used in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So it doesn't have anything to do with health benefits or reducing stress. And the path that Patanjali gives to accomplish spiritual maturation leading to liberation focuses on the practice of meditation and is a path of purification, control, and transcendence of the mind. Yoga Sutras, written circa 200 BCE, codify the ancient yoga philosophy. Patanjali's system is one of the 6 classical philosophical systems. They're called darshanas, so that's another meaning of the word darshan. It's sight, but it's philosophical insight. It's another type of sight. So it's used for philosophy systems, classic ones, of which there are 6, and is known as Yoga Darshana. It's also called classical yoga by Gurudeva. Raja Yoga and Ashtanga, or 8-limbed yoga, which is what Ashtanga means. So this next one is interesting. Our next concept is on yoga as a disunion. Usually yoga is translated as union. In general usage, the Sanskrit word yoga means union. In Hindu philosophy, the union referred to is that of the individual self with the Supreme, also described as Atman with Brahman, and Jiva with Shiva. So that's good, correct. However, the process which the term yoga refers to in the Yoga Sutras is one of separating rather than joining. How would you explain the idea of separating in the Yoga Sutras? Merriam-Webster's definition of yoga captures this subtlety, much to my surprise to find that out many years ago. Yoga, capitalized meaning the philosophy, a Hindu theistic philosophy teaching the suppression of all activity of body, mind, and will in order that the self may realize its distinction from them and attain liberation. So we got that right. Realize its distinction from body, mind, and will. Dr. Feuerstein stated this idea as follows. According to one definition especially popular among Vedanta and Neo-Vedanta followers, yoga means union, which we just looked at. Although this may be correct as regards certain forms of yoga, it is definitely inapplicable to Patanjali's Kriya Yoga, whose essence consists rather in a disunion, namely this disjunction of the Purusha, soul, and the world. The idea of a disunion is in fact the first concept presented in classical yoga teachings of the Yoga Sutras. This is quoting the verses. Now the exposition of yoga. Yoga is the restraint of mental activities. Then awareness abides in its natural state. Otherwise, awareness identifies with the mental activities. In other words, the state referred to in verse 3, then awareness abides in its natural state, is a result of awareness disuniting with the mental activities and remaining temporarily aware only of itself until thoughts again arise. This is the first way disunion takes place, and of course is generally for an extremely short period. Gurudeva stated the goal of disunion using the terms consciousness for mental activities and awareness. Consciousness and awareness are the same when awareness is totally identified with and attached to that which it is aware of. What does Gurudeva say next? Very important. separate the two is the artful practice of yoga. So, separation. This is the example I use to illustrate the point. I hold up a piece of paper and I say, I see the paper. That makes sense, right? I see the paper. If I say, I am the paper, how many of you would think that? No one. We're trained that we are not physical objects. We perceive them. We see the paper. We smell the incense. We hear the water moving. That's the way we think. But then we say, I am happy. We are the happiness, but we are not the paper. In the terminology of Patanjali's first few verses, happiness is the mental activity that awareness has identified with. The idea is to distinguish ourselves from what is mental in the same way we distinguish ourselves from what is physical. We don't want to say, I am happy. We want to say, I, as awareness, perceive there's an emotion called happiness in there, but I am the perceiver of happiness. My emotions are currently in a state of being happy. But I am perceiving that. That isn't who I am, just like I am not the paper. In classical yoga, the second way in which disunion takes place is in deep meditation, which is the idea of a sustained experience of pure awareness. This idea is introduced in verses 17 and 18. Samadhi that is accompanied by vitarka, vichara, ananda, or asmita is samprajñata. The other, asamprajñata samadhi, follows the former upon the practice of the notion of cessation and has only samskaras as residuum. Pretty deep. The meaning of these four terms is vitarka, the thought process when concentrating on a gross object. Vichara, the thought process when concentrating on a subtle object. Ananda, bliss. And asmita, a sense of I amness, being a person. Asamprajñata samadhi is also called objectless samadhi. Dr. Feuerstein gives this definition of asamprajñata samadhi, the technique leading to and the experience of the state of unified consciousness beyond all cognitive content. In this superlative condition, subject and object become one. This realization presupposes a temporary deconstruction of the ordinary consciousness. All that is left is a residuum of subconscious tendencies called samskaras. Gurudeva says, pure awareness, aware only of itself. Superconsciousness, the core of consciousness, and elucidates. Pure awareness, aware only of itself, is a fairly simple state to attain, but it does take a long time to be able to sustain that state for more than an instant or two. Ask anyone and they will tell you that they can at any moment become aware that they are aware. To remain longer in this state than a fleeting second does take practice. The breath should be well regulated and the nerve system harmonized, and the meditator should have made peace within himself, with family and friends, and be steadfast in this practice before the state of pure awareness can be held for longer periods of time. Third way disunion takes place is at the time of moksha, liberation from rebirth. The last verse in the Yoga Sutras is on this, the ultimate disunion. The involution of the gunas, which are now devoid of purpose for the Purusha, is what is called kaivalya, or the establishment of the power of awareness in its natural state. The purpose of the gunas, the material world, is twofold: to provide experience and finally liberation to the Purusha. So that's very important. We need a certain amount of experience in the world. We just can't head straight for liberation. We won't achieve it. So experience provides maturity for the soul, and when the soul is mature enough, then it starts looking for liberation and it can actually find it. In Kaivalya, the world is permanently gone. Only Purusha exists, turned in on itself. As stated at the beginning of Chapter 1, when mental activity is restrained, the soul's faculty that witnesses thoughts naturally turns in on itself. However, this is temporary. It only lasts until thoughts again arise. In meditation, it is much longer. Whereas in Kaivalya, the power of awareness is permanently established in itself. So that's the end of answering that question. A bit deep, but it's basically the idea that awareness is the witness and consciousness is what is being witnessed. So this is another question. When a person attains self-realization, does he become a Satguru? Or Satguru is different souls than the rest of humanity? So I'm going to answer the question indirectly. It starts with a story in Chapter 7 of Gurudeva's booklet, Spiritual Visions. The Inner Navigator introduces the concept of intuition or listening to one's inner self. It reads, while I was waiting in Phoenix, deciding whether to open my organization there, I had another experience one day while driving my small car. My inner self told my outer self, look at the sign. If any of you have been to Phoenix, you know it's totally a flat area, absolutely flat. There I was driving around this big flat area where there were lots of houses and homes. Look at that sign. Remember the sign. It was Spruce Street. I took note of the sign. Then I said, okay, I'm just going to get into my inner self. Inner self said, drive 20 blocks forward, turn left, and drive 10 blocks, turn right, then drive 5 blocks, turn left, 2 blocks, turn around, back up, go 10 blocks, and on like that for about 2 hours as I followed the instructions. Then it said, stop and look at the sign. Spruce Street, meaning it was back where he started. I was a believer in myself, an absolute believer in myself. The book also contains in Chapter 4 the story of Gurudeva meeting his Guru Yoga Swami of Jaffna. There are many groups of Yoga Swami devotees in Western countries, particularly in Canada and Australia. When I talk to them about Yoga Swami and Gurudeva, part of the talk always makes reference to Yoga Swami being a great yogi who would sit for hours, even days, in deepest meditation. I noticed a common response in the different groups, which was to readily recognize Yoga Swami's greatness and put him on a tall pedestal, so to speak, without any thought that Yoga Swami's high spiritual attainments are also our potential. The spiritual destiny of each soul to be reached at some point in this or a future life. So that's important. Yoga Swami's high spiritual attainments are also our potential. Gurudeva makes this point in the Clear White Light chapter of Merging with Shiva. Occasionally in a cross-section of the inner mind, when light merges into transcendental form, the young aspirant may view the golden actinic face of a master peering into his, kindly and all-knowing. He is looking at his own great potential. Therefore, in reading the 14 stories in Gurudeva's spiritual visions, keep in mind this idea that the visions, intuitions, and other mystical experience of Gurudeva are something you can eventually experience in this life. Relating all this to our question about the Satguru, all human souls have the potential of having the same realizations as the Satguru. However, there is another aspect to the answer to the question. That aspect starts with the definition of the term guru. Guru, weighty one, indicating an authority of great knowledge or skill, a term used to describe a teacher or guide in any subject. So teacher. Such as music, dance, sculpture, but especially religion. For clarity, the term is often preceded by a qualifying prefix. What kind of teacher? Hence, terms such as Kulaguru, family teacher, Vinaguru, Vina teacher, and Satguru, spiritual preceptor. So there's many kinds of gurus. So what we're talking about is really a Satguru. Then we have the definition of Sat, true, existing, good, reality, existence, truth. Let's take the last one, truth. Therefore, a Satguru is someone who helps you realize the truth that is resident within you. After Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the sannyasin has a choice to serve mankind or to wait for mankind to unfold into the consciousness that he has attained. This is called being a bodhisattva or upadeshi, one who serves, or an arahat or nirvani, one who waits. The golden body begins to grow through service and by bringing others into enlightenment as a bodhisattva, or through the constant practice of Nirvikalpa Samadhi while living a strict, secluded life as an arahat, only mixing with those of his own level of realization. In other words, all realized beings do not automatically choose to become Satgurus. They need to be actively teaching, trying to bring shishya along to realize the truth within them. So it's an interesting point. I came across this in Satsang a number of years ago. So I think someone asked me the question, what is a Satguru? A little bit on a challenging or skeptical tone of voice. Though you could tell he had the idea that a Satguru is someone because of an attainment. So if the person has that attainment or not, how do you know? But the attainment, the inner attainment, is what makes someone called a Satguru. So I explained it without challenging his idea by this point, which is, it's like anything else. A Vina teacher. What's the goal of a Vina teacher? Not to be a great virtuoso on stage, but to help the students acquire the skills. So likewise, Satguru is someone who's helping his shishya go deeper and deeper into the truth that's within them. If he doesn't do that, then he's not really a Satguru, the way we look at it. So thank you very much. Om.